My name is Isaac, and where I come from, we do not seek the spotlight. I am just a 14-year-old boy from a plain family, raised to work the soil and follow the old ways. Before last Saturday, my faith was like my Sunday coat, something heavy I wore because I had to, not because it lived inside me. I thought being Amish was enough. I followed the Ordnung, did my chores, and waited for the day I would be old enough for adult baptism, thinking that the water would finally make me right with God. I was wrong. I was living a life of rules, but my heart was as cold as the February ground. On February 14, 2026, I learned that God does not look at the color of your suspenders or the length of your beard. He looks at the soul, and mine was not ready for what was coming. It was a gray, bitter morning. My father had sent me and my friend Levi out with the spring wagon to haul supplies from the mill. The horses were restless, spooked by the biting wind. As we turned onto the main road, a loud noise from an Englisher's machine sent the team into a panic. The horses bolted. I pulled the reins until my palms bled, but they were possessed by fear. The wagon hit a frost heave, and I was thrown. I remember the world turning upside down, the sound of wood splintering, and then a heavy darkness that felt like falling into a deep, dry well. I felt the spirit leave my body as easily as a hand pulls out of a work glove. One moment, I was straining every muscle to stop those horses, feeling the rough leather bite into my skin and the cold air burning my lungs. And the next, I was simply gone from the struggle. There was no transition, no long walk. I was just standing there, yet I wasn't standing on the dirt road anymore. I looked down and saw the wreckage. The wagon was overturned, one of the wheels still spinning slowly in the winter air. I saw Levi, poor Levi, who had managed to jump clear. He was running toward a bundle of dark clothes in the ditch. It took me a moment to realize that the bundle was me. I saw my own face, pale and motionless against the brown grass. It was strange to see myself from the outside. In our community, we do not have many mirrors, and we are taught not to dwell on our own image. Seeing my body lying there, broken and still, made me feel a strange sense of distance. I wasn't sad for myself, but I felt a great weight of worry for my mother and father. I knew they would be waiting for the flour and the grain, and instead they would receive news that would break their hearts. I tried to call out to Levi. I wanted to tell him that I wasn't in that broken shell anymore. I reached out to touch his shoulder as he knelt by my body, crying out my name, but my hand went through him like a mist through the branches of an apple tree. He couldn't feel me, he couldn't hear me. That was when the pull began. It wasn't a frightening pull, but it was firm. It felt like the way the earth pulls on a stone, but upward. The road, the horses, and the weeping boy all began to fade, becoming smaller and smaller until they were just dots on a vast, wintry landscape. The sky didn't just stay gray, it began to glow from the inside out. It was as if the sun was hidden behind a thin sheet and someone was slowly pulling that sheet away. Then I was in the light. It is hard to explain this light to someone who has only seen the light of the world. Even the brightest summer day in the hayfields is dim compared to this. It was a light that had a life of its own. It didn't just shine on things, it seemed to be the source of everything. And in the center of that light, I felt a presence so great that I knew I had to bow. I had spent my whole life being told about the humility of a Christian, but I never knew what true humility was until that moment. I felt like a single grain of sand in front of a mountain. I was terrified, not because I was being threatened, but because I realized how small and dusty my soul was. I thought of my plain clothes, my straw hat that was gone, and my boots that were caked with the mud of the farm. I felt like I was standing before a great king in rags. I fell to my knees, burying my face in my hands. I thought about the adult baptism I had been looking forward to. I realized then that I had been treating it like a chore to be checked off a list, something that would make me a man in the eyes of the church. But here in this place, the titles of the world and the traditions of the church meant nothing. The only thing that mattered was if I knew the person standing in that light. I felt a hand on my head. It was a hand that had worked, a hand that knew toil, but it was also a hand that held the stars in place. Isaac, a voice said. It wasn't a loud voice, but it echoed through every part of me. It was like the sound of deep water moving over stones. Why are you afraid? I couldn't look up. I told him I was a sinner. I told him I had been proud of being Amish, proud of being separate from the world, but that my heart had been full of judgment for those who weren't like me. I told him I had followed the rules but hadn't loved him. I felt a great wave of heat wash over me, but it didn't burn. It felt like the way a mother's hug feels when you've come in from a blizzard. It was a love so thick I could almost taste it. "Look at me," he said. I slowly raised my head. I expected to see a face that was angry or a face that looked like a judge. Instead, I saw a face that was more beautiful than any sunrise over the Pennsylvania hills. His eyes were like clear pools of water, and when he looked at me, I knew that he saw everything. He saw the times I had lied about finishing my chores. He saw the times I had been angry at my brothers. He saw the secret pride I carried. But even seeing all that, he didn't turn away. He smiled, and I felt as though my soul was being mended. It was Jesus. I didn't need to ask. I just knew. He helped me to my feet, and as I stood there, I realized I wasn't wearing my old work clothes anymore. I was wearing something bright and clean. It wasn't about being Amish or being English anymore. It was about being his. He looked at me with such kindness that I wanted to stay there forever. I forgot about the mill, the horses, and the wagon. I forgot about the world I had left behind. But then his expression changed. The brightness didn't leave his face, but a shadow of great concern appeared. "You have been brought here for a reason, Isaac," he said. "The world is sleeping, and the time of the harvest is almost gone. Come and see what is hidden from the eyes of those who only look at the earth." He didn't take me by the hand, but I felt myself moving with him. We were standing on what looked like a vast floor of glass, and beneath us, I could see the world. But it didn't look like the world I knew. It looked like it was covered in a thick gray fog. Through that fog, I could see people moving about. They were busy, they were building things, buying things, and talking into those little glowing boxes that the Englishers use. But I noticed something terrible. Most of the people were walking around with chains. These weren't metal chains like we use for the plow. They were dark, heavy things that seemed to grow out of their own hearts. Some were chained to their houses, some to their money, and some were chained to things I didn't understand. "Look closer," Jesus told me. I looked at a man who was sitting in a large, fancy room. He had everything a person could want, but his soul was shriveled like a dried-up apple. The chain around his neck was labeled with words I could understand: pride, greed, and self. He was so busy looking at his glowing box that he didn't see the dark figure standing right behind him, holding the other end of the chain. This figure wasn't human. It was something twisted and hateful, and it was whispering into the man's ear. The man would nod and smile, thinking the thoughts were his own. I felt a sharp pain in my chest. "Why don't they see it?" I asked. Because they have made the world their god," Jesus answered. "They think they have all the time in the world, but the sun is setting on their day." We moved again, not with our feet, but like the way a thought travels when you are dreaming. The glass floor beneath us seemed to stretch out until it covered everything, and Jesus led me to a place where I could see my own people. I saw a meeting house, plain and white, standing in the middle of a snowy field. It looked so peaceful, just like the ones I had grown up in. I saw the buggies lined up, the horses tied to the rails, shivering in the wind. Inside, the people were sitting on the hard wooden benches. The men were on one side, their hats under their seats, and the women were on the other, their heads covered in white caps. It looked like the very picture of holiness. But then Jesus moved his hand, and the walls of the meeting house seemed to turn into water. I could see through them, and I could see into the hearts of the people sitting there. It was a sight that made me want to weep. I saw a man I had always respected, an elder who spoke with a loud, firm voice during the meetings. On the outside, he was as plain as could be, but inside his chest, I saw a knot of black snakes. Jesus told me these were the snakes of gossip and the love of power. The man wasn't thinking about the word of God. He was thinking about how to make his neighbor follow a new rule he had dreamed up. He was using the Ordnung like a whip to lash others, while his own soul was starving for mercy. Beside him sat a young man, not much older than me. He was waiting for his adult baptism, just as I had been. He looked so serious, but his heart was far away. I saw images flickering inside him like shadows on a barn wall. He was dreaming of the things in the city, the fast machines and the lights of the Englishers. He was only staying in the church because he was afraid of being shunned, Not because he loved the Lord. He was putting on a coat of religion, but underneath, he was already gone. They honor me with their lips, Jesus said, and his voice sounded like the wind moaning through a graveyard. But their hearts are like stone. They think that because they wear the clothes of their grandfathers and speak the old tongue, they are safe. They have made a god out of their tradition, but they have forgotten the one who gave them life. I felt a great trembling in my legs. I realized that if I had died before that accident, I might have been just like that boy. I had been proud of my straw hat and my chores, thinking that my work was earning me a place in heaven. I saw now that all our works are like dirty rags if they aren't done for him. The scene shifted, and suddenly we were standing in the middle of a field that stretched as far as the eye could see. It was a wheat field, and the grain was white, ready for the harvest. I have spent many days in the fields, and I know the smell of a good crop. But as I looked closer, I saw that the wheat was starting to rot. The heads of the grain were heavy, but they were turning a sickly gray. They were leaning over, falling into the dirt because no one had come to gather them. I looked around for the harvesters. I saw a few people standing at the edge of the field. They had scythes in their hands, but they weren't cutting the wheat. They were arguing with each other. One was saying that the scythes weren't sharp enough, and another was saying the weather wasn't right. Another group was sitting under a shade tree, eating and drinking, acting as if they had all the time in the world. They didn't even notice the grain falling and wasting away. "The harvest is great," Jesus whispered, and I felt his tears falling on my spirit. "But the laborers are sleeping. They think the summer will last forever. They do not see the clouds gathering on the horizon." He pointed toward the edge of the world, and I saw a line of darkness that made the winter night look bright. It was a storm like nothing I had ever imagined. There was no lightning, just a deep, devouring blackness that was moving toward the field. It didn't move fast, but it was steady. And I knew that once it reached the wheat, nothing would be left. "I have sent messengers," Jesus said. "I have sent warnings in the wind and in the shaking of the earth. I have called to them in the quiet of the night, but they have plugged their ears with the noise of the world. Even my own people, those who say they are separate, have let the world creep into their thoughts." I saw a vision then of a great door. It was made of wood that looked like it had been weathered by 1,000 years of storms. It was standing open, and a soft golden light was spilling out from behind it. People were walking past the door. Some would stop and look at it for a moment, but then they would hear someone calling them from the darkness, and they would walk away. I saw a mother dragging her children past the door, telling them they had plenty of time to go inside later. I saw an old man leaning on his cane, looking at the light with longing, but he was too afraid to take the step. Suddenly, I saw a hand reach out from the shadows. It wasn't a human hand. It was long and clawed, and it began to slowly pull the door shut. The hinges groaned with a sound that made my teeth ache. It was the sound of a final ending. "The door is swinging shut, Isaac," Jesus told me. "The year 2026 is the year of the final call. The time for playing with religion is over. The time for pretending is finished. Those who are not inside when the door latches will find no way to open it again, no matter how hard they knock." I wanted to run to the door and hold it open. I wanted to scream at the people walking by to look up, to see the light, to see the darkness coming behind them. But I had no voice in the vision. I could only watch as the gap grew smaller and smaller. I saw people I knew from my own village walking toward the darkness, laughing and talking about the next year's planting, never knowing that the end of all things was breathing down their necks. Jesus turned to me, and his eyes were like fire. "You must tell them what you see. You must tell them that I am not looking for those who just follow a list of rules. I am looking for those who love me more than their own lives. I am looking for those who will leave everything to enter that door." I felt the weight of his words pressing down on me. I was just a boy. How could I tell the elders? How could I tell the Englishers? But I knew I couldn't stay silent. I saw a group of children playing near the closing door, and one of them looked just like my little brother. My heart felt like it was going to burst. I reached out toward them, but the vision began to swirl and change again. pulling me deeper into the secrets of what is to come. The light around us seemed to pulse like a heartbeat, and with every throb, I felt the urgency of the moment growing. Jesus led me to the edge of a great cliff that wasn't made of rock, but of shimmering glass. He told me to look down once more, but this time he didn't show me the people. He showed me the earth itself. I saw the great forests, the rolling hills, and the wide oceans, but they looked like they were groaning. It was as if the very ground was tired of holding up the weight of man's rebellion. I saw the mountains trembling and the rivers looking like they wanted to overflow their banks to wash away the filth they had seen. Creation knows its master is coming, Jesus said softly. The birds of the air and the beasts of the field feel the change in the wind. Only man who was made in my image remains blind. They look at the sky and predict the rain for their crops, but they cannot see the fire that is coming to purify the world. Then the vision changed. I was standing in front of a massive oak tree, the kind that has stood for hundreds of years in the middle of a pasture. To my eyes, it looked strong and healthy. Its branches were wide and its leaves were thick. But then Jesus touched the bark and the tree became like glass. I saw that the heart of the tree was infested with thousands of small black worms. They were eating it from the inside out, turning the solid wood into dust. The tree looked fine on the outside, but it was a hollow shell. A single strong wind would knock it over. This is the state of many who call themselves by my name, he told me. They have a tall stature and a grand appearance. They speak of their long history and their deep roots, but they have allowed the worms of secret sin to live in their hearts. They think because the outside is green, the inside is safe. But I tell you, Isaac, when the great wind blows in 2026, these trees will fall, and they will never rise again. I watched as one of the worms crawled out of the wood. It had a face that looked almost human, but twisted with a smile that made my eyes crawl. It looked at me and hissed, and I knew that these worms were the small compromises people make every day, the little lies, the hidden anger, the pride that says, I am better than my neighbor. Next, he showed me a great well in the middle of a dry, thirsty land. The water at the bottom of the well was crystal clear and glowing with a light that made me want to jump in and drink forever. But as I looked around the well, I saw people sitting in the dirt. They were parched, their lips cracked and bleeding from the heat. Instead of drawing water from the well, they were digging in the sand with their bare hands, trying to find moisture in the dry earth. Some were even drinking from stagnant, muddy puddles where animals had walked. Why don't they drink from the well? I cried out. It made no sense. The water was right there. The well is mine, Jesus answered. But to drink from it, they must kneel. They must admit they cannot find water on their own. They prefer the mud of their own making because they do not want to bow their heads to me. They spend their lives digging holes that will never hold water while the river of life stands ignored at their side. I saw a woman I recognized from a town near our farm. She was a kind woman who always waved when our buggy passed. She was digging frantically in the sand, her fingers raw and bloody. I tried to point to the well, to tell her to just turn around, but she was so focused on the dust that she couldn't hear me. It broke my heart to see such effort wasted on nothing. Then the scene shifted to a barn, but it wasn't like any barn I had ever worked in. It was vast, reaching into the clouds. Inside, the floor was covered in grain that had just been threshed. A great wind began to blow through the open doors, a wind that felt clean and holy. I saw the grain being tossed into the air. Most of it was heavy and gold, falling back to the floor in a solid pile. But much of it was just chaff, the light, useless husks that look like grain but have no food inside. The wind caught the chaff and blew it out into the darkness, away from the barn, where it was lost forever. The sifting has begun, Jesus said, and his voice held a note of finality. In this year, 2026, I am tossing the grain. I am separating those who are full of my spirit from those who are merely empty husks. The world will see who truly belongs to me and who has only been hiding in the pile. The wind is blowing harder now, Isaac. Can you feel it? I could feel it. It wasn't a wind that moved my hair, but a wind that moved my soul. It felt like it was searching me, looking for any bit of chaff left in my own heart. I fell to my knees again, trembling. I realized that even being an Amish boy didn't make me heavy grain. Only the love of Jesus could do that. As I lay there, he showed me one more thing in that moment. I saw a group of men dressed in the finest clothes standing on a stage. They were shouting and pointing to the sky, telling people that they knew the way to peace and safety. But behind them, I saw the same dark figures I had seen before, the ones with the chains. The dark figures were pulling strings attached to the men's hands and mouths like they were wooden dolls. The people watching were cheering, following the men straight toward a great pit that was hidden by a thin covering of hay. "They follow the blind," Jesus said, "and the blind follow the enemy. They talk of peace when there is no peace. They talk of a bright future when the night is already here and has. Do not trust the words of men who do not tremble at my word." I looked up at him, and I saw that he was looking toward the horizon. The light around him was growing more intense, turning from gold to a fiery white. I felt a sense of time running out, like the sand in a glass that was almost empty. The year 2026 felt like a wall we were all about to hit. "Go deeper, Isaac," he told me. "There is more you must see before you return. The battle is not just for the world, but for the very homes of those who claim to follow me." The light around us shifted again, and this time it felt as though we were sinking through the clouds, back toward the earth, but not to the whole world at once. We were hovering over the rooftops of houses, small farmhouses like mine, and big, sprawling homes of the Englishers. Jesus led me to a window of a house that looked very much like my own. It was a plain house with no wires and no fancy things. Inside, a family was sitting around a table for their evening meal. They were quiet, and their heads were bowed as the father said a long prayer in the old German tongue. To anyone watching, it was a beautiful sight of a godly home. But Jesus touched the glass, and I saw what was really happening. The father was praying, but his mind was like a marketplace. He was counting his money, worrying about his property, and feeling a deep, bitter anger toward a neighbor who had insulted him. His prayer was just a habit of the mouth, not a cry of the heart. The mother was sitting there, her face smooth and calm, but inside, she was filled with a gray mist of sadness and doubt. She didn't believe the words her husband was saying. She was just tired of the life she led. And the children, they were like empty vessels. They were waiting for the prayer to end so they could go back to their own thoughts. There was no light in that room. The lamp on the table was lit with oil, but the spiritual lamp of the home was dark. "This is the great deception of the final hour," Jesus said, and his voice was heavy with a sorrow that made my own heart ache. "People think that because they have a peaceful home and a quiet life, they are right with me. They think that because they do not commit the great sins the world loves, they do not need to repent. But I tell you, Isaac, a cold heart is just as dead as a wicked one. I would rather they be hot or cold, but because they are lukewarm, I am ready to spit them out of my mouth." He showed me another house then, a big Englisher house with lights in every window. Inside, the people were running from room to room. They had music playing that sounded like the crashing of stones, and they were surrounded by glowing screens. I saw a young girl sitting on her bed, staring at a small box in her hand. She was looking at pictures of other people, wishing she was someone else, feeling a deep hole of loneliness in her chest. Behind her, I saw a dark shadow, one of those twisted beings, whispering to her that she was ugly, that she was worthless, and that no one loved her. The girl believed the whispers because she didn't know the voice that was calling her from the light. "They have filled their lives with noise, so they do not have to hear me," Jesus said. "They have made idols out of glass and light. They carry their gods in their pockets and worship them from morning until night. And because they are so busy looking down, they will never see the sign in the heavens when I return in 2026. Then, the vision took a turn that made me catch my breath. We were back in the great hallway of light, and standing there was the angel Gabriel. I had seen him before in the visions, but now he was closer. He was taller than the highest barn, and his clothes were made of woven lightning. He wasn't looking at me. He was looking at Jesus, waiting for a single nod of the head. In his hands, he held a trumpet of pure beaten gold. It was so bright it hurt to look at. He wasn't holding it at his side anymore. He had it raised just inches from his lips. The air around the trumpet was vibrating. It was as if the music was already inside the horn, straining to get out. I felt a pressure in my ears, a tension like the moment before a great oak tree cracks in a storm. "The breath is already in him," Jesus whispered. "The command has been written. The year 2026 is the year the silence ends." For 2,000 years, I have been calling in a still, small voice, but soon I will speak with the sound of the trumpet, and every ear will hear, whether they want to or not. I looked at Gabriel's face. There was no anger in him, but there was a terrifying holiness. He was the servant of the Most High, and he was ready to end the age of man. I realized then that all the things people worry about, their crops, their taxes, their reputations, were like spiderwebs in the path of a brush fire. They would be gone in a second. Jesus then showed me a vision of a great clock. It wasn't a clock with numbers, but with seasons. The hand was moving past the time of planting, past the time of growing, and was hovering just a hair's breadth away from the midnight of the harvest. I saw the year 2026 written in letters of fire across the face of the clock. I have pulled back the veil for you, Isaac, so you can see the truth of the time. Many will say that 2026 is just another year. They will say that people have been talking about the end forever and that nothing has changed. They do not realize that every day they have been given was a gift of my mercy. But mercy has a limit, and the limit has been reached. This is the last year of the open door. This is the last year where the shepherd's voice can lead the sheep home. After this, the lion must roar. I saw a group of people I knew, members of my own church district. They were standing in a circle, talking about a new barn that was being built. They were laughing and shaking hands. I saw myself among them, or the boy I used to be. I saw the shadow of the trumpet falling over them, but they didn't see it. They were so focused on the dirt beneath their feet that they couldn't see the heaven opening above their heads. "Why me?" I asked, my voice trembling. "I am just a boy. I haven't even had my adult baptism. I don't know enough to warn them." Jesus turned and looked at me, and I felt as though I was being filled with a strength that wasn't mine. "I do not call the wise, Isaac. I call the willing. I do not need you to know everything. I only need you to tell them what you have seen with your own eyes and felt with your own soul. Tell them that the water of baptism cannot wash a heart that refuses to repent. Tell them that the name of Amish or Christian will not save them if they do not know me as their friend and their Lord." He showed me one more vision in this part. I saw a great bridge stretching across a terrifying chasm. The bridge was narrow and it was made of light. On the other side was a land so beautiful it made me weep just to glimpse it. Fields of flowers that never wilt and trees that sing with the wind. But the bridge was crowded. People were trying to cross it, but they were carrying heavy bags over their shoulders. Some bags were full of money, some were full of books, and some were full of religious rules. As they stepped onto the bridge of light, the weight of their bags made them stumble. The bridge was too narrow for the bags, and I saw person after person fall into the darkness below because they wouldn't let go of what they were carrying. "They want my kingdom, but they want their world too," Jesus said. "They want the crown, but they will not carry the cross. In 2026, only those who travel light, those who have left everything for me, will make it across. The bridge is narrowing, Isaac. The time of carrying the world is over." I felt the pull of the earth again, the weight of my broken body calling me back. But there was so much more. I saw the sky start to roll back like a scroll, and I knew the next part of the vision would be the most difficult of all. The fiery whiteness of the light grew until I could no longer see the glass floor or the horizon. It was just me and the Lord, standing in a place that felt like the very center of everything. I felt a great trembling in my spirit, not because I was afraid of being hurt, but because the holiness of Jesus was so bright, it made my own soul feel like a dusty window pane. He looked at me, and I saw that he was holding something. It was a book, but it wasn't made of paper and leather like the great family Bible on our mantle. It was a book that seemed to be made of light itself, and the pages moved as if they were breathing. "This is the record of those who have given me their hearts," Jesus said. He opened the book, and I saw names written in a script that glowed like embers. I saw names I knew. some of the old mothers in our community who spent their days in quiet prayer, and some of the Englishers who had nothing in this world but their faith in him. But as I watched, my heart went cold. I saw some names beginning to dim. It was like watching a candle flame struggle against a draft. The letters grew faint, flickering, and then, with a sadness that shook the heavens, a few of them vanished altogether. "Why are they disappearing?" I whispered, my voice breaking. "Because they have turned back," Jesus answered, and I saw a tear fall from his eye onto the glowing page. "They started the race, Isaac. They had their names written here when they first felt the touch of my spirit. But then the world began to call to them. They grew tired of being different. They grew tired of the narrow way. They began to love their comfort more than they loved the truth. They thought they could keep one foot in my kingdom and one foot in the world. But in this year of 2026, there is no middle ground. The fence is being torn down. You are either with me or you are against me." I saw a vision then of a great marketplace. It was filled with people from every nation, and the noise was like the crashing of a storm. People were trading their souls for things that looked like bright toys. I saw a man trade his eternity for a bigger barn. I saw a woman trade her peace for the approval of her neighbors. And I saw young people, boys and girls my own age, trading their inheritance in heaven for a few moments of feeling normal in the eyes of the Englishers. Behind every person who made a trade, I saw one of those dark, twisted shadows. They were laughing, clutching the souls they had bought with nothing but lies. "They do not realize the price," Jesus said. "They think they are just making a small change, a little compromise. They say it is just a small thing. God will understand. But every small compromise is a step away from the light. And now, as the trumpet is held to Gabriel's lips, those steps have led them into the woods where they are lost." Then he showed me a vision that hit me harder than the wagon ever could. I saw a great church building, not a plain one, but one with stained glass and soft seats. The people inside were singing songs about Jesus, and the preacher was speaking about love and blessing. But as I looked into the rafters of that building, I saw thousands of those dark spirits. They were sitting on the beams, dangling their legs, and they were bored. They weren't even trying to stop the service. "Why aren't they attacking?" I asked. "Because they don't have to," Jesus replied with a voice that sounded like breaking glass. "The enemy does not bother those who are already asleep. These people have the name of Christ, but they do not have his power. They talk about me as if I am a story in a book, not a living king who is standing at their door. They have their adult baptism, they have their memberships, they have their committees, but they do not have me. They are like a lamp that is polished and beautiful on the outside, but has no oil and no wick. They are harmless to the darkness, so the darkness leaves them alone." I saw a demon lean down and whisper something to a woman in the front row. She smiled and adjusted her fancy hat, thinking she was holy. The demon winked at another spirit and went back to sleep. It was a terrible sight. I realized that the enemy is most successful not when he is fighting us, but when he has made us comfortable in our sins. Jesus then turned my gaze back to the year 2026. I saw the numbers appearing in the sky again, but this time they were surrounded by a circle of fire. Inside the circle, I saw the faces of people who were waking up. I saw a man in a city drop to his knees on a busy sidewalk, crying out for mercy. I saw a girl in a plain dress throw away a secret device she had hidden, falling on her face to beg for forgiveness for her double life. I saw elders in the meeting houses weeping over their pride. "There is a remnant," Jesus said, and for a moment, a flash of joy lit up his face. "There are those who hear the vibration of the trumpet before it even sounds. They feel the shaking in their bones. They are trimming their lamps. They are letting go of the world. They are the ones who will stand when 2026 reaches its end. But they are few, Isaac, so very few." He led me to a vision of a great banquet table. It was set with the finest food, and the light above it was so warm it felt like a summer afternoon. The seats were labeled with names, and I saw that many of the seats were empty. Outside the banquet hall, people were busy playing games, arguing about their clothes, and tending to their businesses. A servant came out and called to them, telling them the feast was ready, but they didn't even look up. One man pointed to his new team of horses and said he couldn't come. Another pointed to his wedding and said he was too busy. I saw the master of the house, who I knew was Jesus, look at the empty seats. A look of such fierce resolve came over him. Then the door will be shut, he said, and those who were invited but would not come will never taste of my supper. I saw the heavy doors of the banquet hall begin to close. As they did, a great darkness began to fall over the people outside. Suddenly, the games weren't fun anymore. The new horses bolted into the night. The businesses crumbled like dry bread. The people ran toward the door, pounding on it with their fists, screaming, "Lord, Lord, open to us!" But the wood of the door was thick, and the master did not answer. They had the invitation for a lifetime, Jesus told me. They had the warnings throughout the year of 2026, but they waited until the darkness fell to take me seriously. You cannot find the door in the dark if you refuse to walk through it in the light. I felt a great sob rise up in my chest. I thought of all my friends, all my cousins, all the people I saw at the market. I wanted to grab them by the shoulders and pull them toward that table. I realized then that my adult baptism wasn't a graduation into being an adult. It was supposed to be a total surrender of my life to the one who was holding me. I had been worried about what the deacons would ask me during the baptism, but I should have been worried about what Jesus would see in my heart. Jesus looked at me, and his gaze seemed to pull me toward the final visions. The time of the great revealing is here, Isaac. The year 2026 is when every mask is stripped away. No one will be able to hide behind their family name or their church traditions anymore. The light is getting too bright for shadows to exist. I saw Gabriel take a deep breath, his chest expanding like a great bellows. The gold of the trumpet seemed to glow white hot. The very fabric of heaven seemed to be stretching, waiting for the sound that would shatter the world's illusions. The whiteness of the light began to swirl, and for a moment I felt as if I were standing in the middle of a great snowstorm. But the flakes were not cold. They were like tiny sparks of fire that didn't burn, but instead they seemed to carry thoughts and memories. Jesus moved closer to me, and as he did, the swirling sparks settled, revealing a vision of a wide, peaceful valley. It looked like the lands where our people have farmed for generations. I saw the neat rows of corn, the sturdy fences, and the big bank barns that stood like fortresses against the sky. It was a place of order and hard work, a place that I had always believed was the closest thing to heaven on earth. But then Jesus breathed upon the valley, and a wind blew across the fields that stripped away the appearance of things. I saw that the soil was not rich and black, but dry and gray, like ash. The corn stalks were tall, but when I looked closer, they were filled with sand instead of sweet milk. And the people working in the fields, my own neighbors, men I had looked up to all my life, were moving like wooden puppets. They were going through the motions of labor, but their eyes were fixed on the ground, never once looking up at the sky. They have mistaken the shadow for the substance, Jesus said, and his voice carried a weight that made the valley tremble. They think that because they have built a kingdom of order, they have built my kingdom. They toil for the bread that perishes, but they have no hunger for the bread of life. They are proud of their humility, Isaac. They are proud of their plainness, but their plainness has become a wall that keeps me out rather than a gate that lets me in. I saw a group of young men, some of them my friends from school, standing behind a barn. They were laughing and passing around a glowing box, one of those phones the Englishers use. They thought they were being clever, hiding their secret from the elders. I saw the dark spirits I had seen before, perched on their shoulders, whispering that it was okay to have a double life. But then I looked at the elders who were walking by, and I saw that they had their own secrets. One was nursing a bitter grudge from 20 years ago. Another was obsessed with his bank account, counting his wealth while his soul was bankrupt. In this year of 2026, Jesus said, pointing toward the sun that was hanging low in the vision's sky, "The secrets will be shouted from the rooftops. I am bringing a light that shines through wood and stone, through skin and bone. There will be no more hiding. Those who think they can live one way in the light of the meeting house and another way in the dark of the night will find that the night has vanished." He showed me a vision of a great river. On one side was the world I knew, with all its noise and its towers of glass. On the other side was the kingdom of light I had glimpsed. Between them was a bridge, but it wasn't made of wood or steel. It was made of a single word: yes. I saw a girl I knew, a girl who was preparing for her adult baptism this spring. She was standing at the edge of the river, looking at the bridge. She wanted to cross, but she was holding a heavy bag filled with the expectations of her family and her fear of what people would say. She kept waiting for someone to push her or for the baptismal water to wash her across. But the water stayed still. The water of the creek cannot carry you across, Jesus told her, though she could not hear him. Only the fire of my spirit can do that. You must choose me, not because your father chose me, and not because the Ordnung tells you to, but because you cannot breathe without me. I realized then that many of us were waiting for our baptism as if it were a magic spell that would fix our hearts. But I saw that for many it was just a bath. They went into the water as sinners who followed rules, and they came out as sinners who followed rules. There was no change, no life, no fire. And in 2026, the fire is what will be required. Then Jesus led me to a vision of a great city. It was a place of the Englishers, filled with lights that never went out and machines that never stopped humming. The people there were moving so fast they were like blurs. They were chasing after things that had no names, feelings, moments, bits of light on a screen. I saw a man standing on a street corner, shouting about the end of the world, but he was doing it with anger in his heart, not love. The people mocked him, and the dark spirits around them cheered. The world mocks the message because they do not see the messenger, Jesus said. They have been told of a God of rules or a God of nothing. They have not been told of the God who bled for them. And now, as the year 2026 unfolds, they have become hardened like the road under a heavy wagon. But even a hard road can be broken by a great earthquake. Suddenly the city began to shake. I saw the tall buildings of glass sway like wheat in a storm. The lights flickered and died. The glowing boxes in people's hands went dark. For a moment, there was a silence so deep it felt like the world had held its breath. In that silence, I heard it again, the vibration of the trumpet. It wasn't a sound yet, but a feeling, a low thrumming that made the very air feel tight. I saw the angel Gabriel move the trumpet closer to his lips. His fingers were long and steady, and his eyes were fixed on Jesus. He was not impatient, but he was ready. He knew that the 2,000 years of waiting were coming to an abrupt end. He knew that 2026 was the threshold. I have given the world every sign, Jesus said, and I saw a vision of the moon turning the color of old blood and the stars seeming to shiver in their places. I have allowed the systems of men to fail so they would look to me. I have allowed their idols to crumble, but they only try to build them back stronger. They think they can outsmart the Creator. They do not realize that the very breath they use to mock me is a gift I am still lending them. He showed me a vision of a great mountain. At the top of the mountain was a lighthouse, but the light wasn't coming from a lamp. It was coming from a group of people who were praying. They were from every tribe and every tongue. I saw a few Amish farmers among them, their knees sore from the hard floors. I saw people from the cities, their faces wet with tears. They weren't praying for better crops or more money. They were crying out for one thing: Thy kingdom come. These are the ones who are holding back the night, Jesus told me. Their prayers are like a sweet incense that rises to my throne. Because of them, I have waited. Because of them, I have extended the day. But the sun is touching the hills, Isaac. The day of grace is almost spent. I saw a vision of a clock again, but this one was inside a human heart. The gears were moving, and with every tick, a little bit of gold dust fell out of the heart and disappeared. Time is the most precious thing I give, he said. And in 2026, the supply is running dry. People spend their time on vanities, never knowing that they are throwing away the only thing they can use to find me. I looked at the people in my village again. I saw them planning for weddings in the fall, planning for the harvest in the summer. They were talking about the year 2027 and 2028 as if they were guaranteed. But in the spirit, I saw a great curtain falling. It wasn't falling slowly, it was picking up speed. Tell the young people, Jesus said, and he looked directly into my soul. Tell them that the world they see is a dream that is about to end. Tell them that their Rumspringa is not a time to play with fire, for the fire is now real and it is holy. Tell them that the choice they make this year is the choice that will echo through eternity. There is no more later. There is only now. I felt a great power surging through me. A desperate need to get back, to shout, to wake up every person I ever knew. I saw the faces of my brothers and sisters, and I felt a love for them that was so strong it hurt. I realized that my life wasn't mine anymore. It belonged to the message. It belonged to the warning. Gabriel took another step forward. The light from his wings cast a shadow over the whole earth. He looked at the trumpet, and then he looked at the world, and I saw a flicker of something like sorrow in his eyes. He knew what would happen when the sound went forth. He knew that for many it would be the most terrifying sound they had ever heard. "One more thing, Isaac," Jesus said. "Look at the gate." I saw a gate made of pearl, so massive it seemed to reach the heavens. It was open, and through it I could see a city that wasn't made of glass or steel, but of light and life. The air there was music, and the light was joy. I saw people walking there, and they looked so whole, so happy, that I started to cry. There were no more chains, no more dark shadows, no more sickness, and no more secret sins. "This is what I have prepared for those who love me," he said. "It is so close. Tell them it is worth the sacrifice. Tell them that the narrow way leads to a room that has no end to its beauty. Do not let them trade this for a world that is passing away." The vision began to fade, and I felt the heavy, cold pull of the earth again. The brightness was being replaced by the gray of the February morning. I felt the pain returning to my limbs, the ache in my head, and the struggle for breath. But the image of the trumpet remained burned into my mind. The light began to ripple like the surface of a pond when a heavy stone is cast into it. Jesus stood before me, and though the visions were coming to an end, the intensity of his presence only grew. He showed me one last series of things that were hidden in the corners of human life, things that would be brought into the light before the end of 2026. I saw a vision of a great mountain made entirely of discarded things. At first I thought it was just rubbish, but as I looked closer, I saw that the mountain was made of Bibles that were never opened, prayers that were never finished, and promises to God that were broken as soon as the sun rose. I saw a young man from a nearby district standing at the base of this mountain. He was holding a small piece of wood, trying to build a shelter for himself. He was working so hard, sweating and straining, but he was building on a foundation of trash. "Many are building their lives on what they have neglected," Jesus said. "They think they can use the memory of their grandfather's faith to protect them from the coming storm. But you cannot live on the breath of another. In 2026, the wind will blow so hard that only what is built on the rock of my word will remain. The rest will be swept into the fire." Then he showed me a vision of a wide, dark room. In the center of the room was a single candle burning low. Around the candle were dozens of people, all of them wearing the plain clothes of our people. They were huddled together, but they weren't looking at the light. They were arguing about the shape of the candle and the color of the wax. While they argued, the dark shadows I had seen before were slowly creeping inward from the corners of the room. One by one, the shadows were reaching out and snuffing out the smaller lights that some of the people held in their hands. "They are distracted by the small things while the darkness takes the room," Jesus whispered. "They think that as long as they agree on the outward signs, they are safe. But the enemy does not care about your signs. He only cares that you have no fire in your heart. Look at the children, Isaac." I looked, and I saw the children in the room. They were pulling at the sleeves of their parents, pointing at the shadows, but the parents were too busy arguing to notice. The children's eyes were filled with a terrible fear, and as I watched, a shadow wrapped around one of the little boys and pulled him into the blackness. The parents didn't even stop their shouting. "This is the spiritual theft of 2026, the Lord said. The enemy is stealing the next generation while the parents are busy with the traditions of the old. If they do not wake up and turn to me with a loud cry, there will be no one left to hear the trumpet." Next, I saw a vision of a great table set in a meadow. It was covered in what looked like a feast: bread, fruit, and honey. People were rushing to the table, pushing each other out of the way to get a seat. They began to eat with great hunger, but as soon as the food touched their lips, it turned into ash. They coughed and choked. But instead of stopping, they just reached for more, thinking the next bite would be different. Behind them, a dark figure was pouring a gray liquid into their cups. They drank it down, and their eyes became cloudy until they couldn't see anything at all. The world is feeding them lies that look like bread, Jesus told me. They chase after feelings and moments, thinking they will be satisfied. But only I am the true bread. In 2026, the hunger of the world will become a great howling. They will look for peace in their laws and their machines, but they will find only the taste of cinders. I saw a vision of the Valley of Decision. It was a narrow pass between two massive cliffs. On one side was a path that looked easy, paved with smooth stones and lined with flowers. On the other side was a path that was nothing but jagged rock and thorns. Thousands of people were standing at the entrance of the valley. They were waiting. They were checking their watches, talking about the weather, and saying they would choose a path tomorrow. But as I watched, the ground beneath them began to tilt. It wasn't a sudden drop, but a slow, steady lean toward the easy path. Because they refused to choose the narrow way, they were naturally sliding toward the wide one. Neutrality is a lie, Jesus said. To not choose is to choose the darkness. In 2026, the ground will tilt so far that no one will be able to stand still. Every soul will be forced to one side or the other. There is no more waiting on the edge. Then he showed me a vision of a great mirror. He told me to look into it. I saw myself, but I didn't see the boy who had fallen from the wagon. I saw a spirit that was trembling. My soul looked like a small flame in a vast, cold cavern. But then Jesus stepped into the mirror with me and suddenly then grew until it filled the whole reflection. This is the only way to survive what is coming, he said. It is not you, Isaac, but me in you. Tell them to stop trying to be good and start trying to be mine. Tell them to give up their strength so they can have mine. I saw a final vision of the angel Gabriel. He was standing on the very edge of the heavenly realm. He was so close to the world that his shadow covered whole countries. The trumpet was now firmly pressed against his lips. I could see the muscles in his face tensed, his eyes locked on the Father, waiting for the split-second signal that would change everything. The atmosphere was so thick with the coming sound that I felt as though I was under deep water. It was a pressure of holiness that no human body was meant to endure. The sound is ready, Jesus said, and his voice held a note of both majesty and mourning. The year 2026 is the year the breath meets the gold. Go now, Isaac. Go back and be the voice of the trumpet before the trumpet speaks for itself. I felt a great sudden weight. It was the weight of my own skin, my own bones, and the heavy atmosphere of the earth. The light began to fade, but it didn't just go away. It felt like it was being folded into my heart. I reached out for the Lord's hand one last time, but I was already falling. I fell through the clouds, through the gray winter air, and through the roof of an ambulance. I felt a cold, sharp needle in my arm and a burning pressure in my chest. My eyes snapped open, and the world was a blur of white lights and the smell of medicine. I tried to speak, but my throat was full of tubes. I saw a man in a blue coat leaning over me, his eyes wide with shock. "He's back," someone shouted. "We have a pulse. He's breathing on his own." I lay there, the pain of my broken ribs and my shattered leg rushing over me like a flood. It was a terrible, grounding pain, but it was nothing compared to the weight of the message I carried. I saw my father standing in the corner of the room, his hat in his hands, his face lined with a grief that was just beginning to turn into hope. I wanted to tell him right then, I wanted to tell him that his prayers were heard, but that his heart needed to wake up. The days that followed were a blur of pain and recovery. The doctors in the hospital told me I was lucky to be alive, that my heart had stopped for a long time on February 14, 2026. But I knew luck had nothing to do with it. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the trumpet. Every time the wind whistled through the hospital window, I thought it was Gabriel's breath. My mother sat by my bed, reading the martyr's mirror to me. I looked at the stories of our ancestors who died for the faith, and I realized they didn't die for a set of rules. They died for the person I had just seen. They died for the light. I told her as best as I could with my voice rasping, "Mom, it's not about the clothes. It's about him. He's coming." She just patted my hand and told me to rest, thinking I was still confused from the accident. But I wasn't confused. I was more awake than I had ever been in my life. I saw the nurses and the doctors walking by, and I saw the chains around their necks. I saw the dark shadows in the corners of the hospital rooms. I saw a world that was laughing and talking about the future, while the clock in heaven was ticking down its final seconds. When they finally let me go home to the farm on February 18, 2026, the air felt different. The snow on the fields looked like the white grain in the vision, ready to be sifted. I sat on the porch, wrapped in a heavy quilt, watching the buggies go by on the road. I felt a desperate love for every person who passed. I wanted to run out and stop them. I wanted to tell the Englishers in their fast cars and our people in their slow buggies that they were all heading for the same door, and that door was closing. I spoke to my friend Levi when he came to visit. He was still shaking from the accident. I told him what I saw. I told him that our adult baptism wasn't enough to save us. He cried, and for the first time, I saw a real light start to flicker in his eyes. He felt the vibration of the trumpet too. I am just a boy, and I know that people will say I had a dream brought on by the pain. They will say that the mind plays tricks when the body is dying. But I know what I felt. I know the love that washed over me, and I know the terror of that closing door. I know that the year 2026 is not just another year on the calendar. It is a boundary. It is a final call. The time of 2026 is here. The Lord told me that this is the final year for the hearts of men to be reached before the great separation. If you are hearing this, do not wait for a better day. Do not wait for the water of baptism to save you later. The door is closing, and once Gabriel blows that horn, there is no more room for change. I saw the truth on the other side of the road. Jesus is real, and he is coming before this year is through. Please, listen to a boy who died and came back. Turn your heart to him before the light goes out forever. Jesus is calling you right now. Will you answer?